Hello YouTube, how's it going? Chris Klein with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio. We're here today to compare Behringer's Model D, which is a recreation of Moog's Minimoog from the 70s. We're going to get into basically the way that they sound, the way the oscillators feel and sound, the timbre of the oscillators, how the filter works, things like that. We're not going to get into all the additions that have been included with the Model D. We just want to compare the way these two critters feel. So without further ado, and before we get started, I want to say happy birthday to Bob and Malula. You know who you are, so if you're watching today, please comment below and say, hey, thank you for recognizing me on my 43rd and 57th birthday. So without further ado, we're going to jump into both of these different synthesizers and compare the oscillators and the filters and a couple of other things. Cool? All right, let's do this. So we're going to go ahead and listen to both keyboards. We're going to listen to the oscillators and the filters. We're not going to do a whole lot more with them because we want to focus on how they sound. We're not going to get into sculpting sounds. That's probably the best way to put this. We're not going to sculpt sounds. We're going to A/B both of these in basically their purest states. And I'm going to try to keep it as unbiased as possible. I don't want to talk too much about what I'm hearing because I would like for you, the listener that's on the other side of the computer or phone or pad or whatever you're using at this point, it's modified Etch-a-Sketch, to determine how these actually sound and feel against each other. But I will let you know, I will audibly call out which one that I am playing, and you will see that as well. I'm going to start with the Model D first from Behringer, and I'm going to play an A for you, and we are listening to the triangle waveform as well. The cutoff frequency is turned all the way up. The filter emphasis is turned all the way down. And we will be doing the same thing with the Minimoog as well. So let's listen to A. That's the Model D. Let's go down an octave. Let's go back up. And let's take it up one more octave. Now once again, this is the triangle waveform. The cutoff frequency is turned all the way up, meaning that there's no cutoff actually happening at this point. The sustain for our ADSR, for our amplitude envelope, is also turned all the way up, while the attack and the decay are turned all the way down. I've mimicked these settings on the Minimoog as well. So let's listen to A over here on the Minimoog. Let's go down one octave. Going to bring it back up and up one more octave. Go back to the Model D. So they're pretty spot on, but let's leave it at that. I think if we really dig in, you're probably going to hear subtle differences, but I want you to determine that. I don't want to influence what you're hearing. Cool? All right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave it here on the triangle waveform for the Model D. I'm going to go ahead and play an A again, and I'm going to bring the cutoff frequency down so you can actually hear what happens as I sweep it back. That's just the cutoff frequency being manipulated. Once again, the emphasis is turned all the way down, contours down, and we're going to do the same thing over on the Minimoog. Let's turn up the filter emphasis all the way on the Model D so we can actually hear the cutoff frequency being swept because we have that peaking filter happening. So let's take a listen to that. And let's do the same thing on the Minimoog. Going to turn it all the way up, and then we're going to bring the cutoff frequency back. So they sound pretty similar once again. So let's look at some of the other waveforms real fast as well. So I'm going to come back over to the Model D, and I'm going to switch it to the triangle sawtooth waveform. Oh, real quick, let me bring the filter emphasis back so we're not manipulating the oscillator anymore. So compared to the triangle, you can actually hear that there's a little more bite to it now, because the harmonics are a little bit different between from the triangle to the triangle sawtooth. So let's go ahead and play the A once again on the Model D. Bring it down an octave. Bring it back up. And up again. Now let's move over to the Minimoog and do the same thing. Let's switch to the triangle saw. Make sure our filter emphasis is all the way back again. Cutoff is all the way up. And let's start with A. Let's go down an octave. Bring it back up. And up again. What are you hearing out there? On my end, once again, they are pretty similar. Cool? So we're going to move to our next waveform, which is the sawtooth. We're back to the Model D, and our cutoff frequency, once again, is all the way up, or it's wide open. We're not cutting anything off. We'll start with A. Significantly more bite to this than the triangle saw. Down an octave. Bring it back up. And up one more. Let's move over to the Minimoog. Do the same thing. Start with A. Take it down. Bring it back up. Up again. And let's go to our next waveform, back to the Model D. And we're going to, there's 3 different pulse waveforms on here, so we're going to go to the first one. Cutoff frequency is all the way up. Start with A. Bring it down. Back up. And one more octave up. Let's go to the Minimoog. Do the same thing. We'll go to the first pulse, or square. Start with A. Bring it down. Back up. Up again. So coming back over here to the D, we're at the next pulse position, pulse waveform. Let's take a listen to that. We'll start with A. Bring it down an octave. Back up. And up again. And then we'll move over to the Minimoog, and we're at the same position, the same waveform, the next pulse. A. Bring it down. Back up. And up again. And then back to the final pulse position, which is more narrower. That's hard to say, narrower. Let's take a listen to that. Once again at A. Bring it down. Back up. Back up again. And then we'll move over to the Minimoog and do the same thing on the last position. A. Down. Back up. and up again. And there you have it. Those are all the waveforms for oscillator 1. So when you look at the panels for both of these synthesizers, the Minimoog and the Model D, you're going to notice that they are laid out in similar fashions. Really, the biggest differences between the two is on the Model D at the top, you're going to notice that you have all these patch points, which will allow you to play with other modular synthesizers. And so you'll see a series of inputs and outputs that will allow you to spit the control voltages out, or bring different modulation sources in, or whatever you fancy doing. It's really up to you. That's the fun part of modular synthesis, is just plugging random inputs and outputs and seeing what kind of chaos can happen. You never know. It can be the most radical sound you've ever heard, or the most beautiful pulsating, lead or pad type of sound. On the Minimoog, you don't have all those inputs and outputs at the top of the panel. You do have a few inputs and outputs in the back, but it's not nearly as flexible as the Model D. With both of these, you still have the option of bringing the output back into the external input, so you can basically feed the keyboard back and get some really, really great distortion out of it to give it a little more character. And you will notice that if you look at the mixer section for each of these modules, for the Minimoog and the Model D, you will notice that you have the external volume pot, the level N, as well as the overload light. Those lights, to me, they don't tell me a whole lot. I want to listen to what's happening, so I'll just bring the external volume in until I get the amount of distortion that I want. But they're both, other than that, very, very similar. The other thing that you get with the Model D is you have MIDI over USB, as well as your standard 5-pin MIDI in and MIDI through. So you can chain other devices together. And with the Model D, you can poly-chain these. For those of you that don't know what that means, is you can actually link these together via MIDI, and you can turn your Model D into a polyphonic synth. Both of these are monophonic, but you can turn the Model D into a polyphonic synthesizer by chaining these units together, which is super, super rad. So highly flexible. You have your A440 tuning on each of these machines, which is really, really important. One thing that I have noticed as I've been sitting here demonstrating these, and they have been warming up and adjusting to the temperature of my space, is that the Minimoog, and I'm not surprised by this, drifts a little bit more. Its pitch drifts a little bit more than the Model D. The Model D is a little more stable. The technology has changed and improved quite a bit in, well, 50 some odd years since the Minimoog was first produced. Has it been 50 years? 1970, so 49 years. It's almost at 50 years now, which is, says a lot for the longevity and the importance of Dr. Bob Moog's original design, which is such a beautiful instrument. Both of these are very similar in how they're laid out with your controllers for each one. On the Model D, you get a couple of more options. You have the mod depth and the LFO rate. With the Minimoog, the original, you have a tune, glide, and modulation mix. We have that on the Model D, but we have a couple of other switches, so we can actually change where it's going to on the Model D, and it's just a little more flexible. But they're both amazing, beautiful instruments. The Minimoog is getting ready to turn 50 years old. These first went into production in 1970, and there were various iterations of this, but they're both beautiful instruments, and they're just a delight to play, and so tweakable, and I don't want to say anything else to manipulate that's going to influence what you're hearing. I don't want the words that are coming out of my face to have any sort of impact on what you're hearing on the other end. I want you to be the judge. And hopefully you'll let us know in the comments below. All right, thanks again for tuning in today. We hope that you enjoyed the side-by-side comparison of Behringer's Model D, which is a faithful recreation of Moog's Minimoog. This is an original unit from the 70s. I couldn't tell you which revision it is, but this is the real deal. This, of course, is the new clone, however you want to refer to it. And as you can hear, they are pretty spot on with each other. We're really stoked about this instrument as well as this. We're lucky that we have somebody in-house that has one of these. There's a bunch of us synth nerds here that have a collection of drum machines and other synthesizers. So we'll be doing more comparisons, side-by-side comparisons as new models are made available and we bring our old models in, just so you can get an idea of what's happening, the old versus the new. And so I guess that's it for today. If you have not subscribed to our channel, you can subscribe below. Just click on the subscribe button. We will be producing more videos on synthesizers, controllers, pro audio, music production, and so on and so forth. There's so much happening all the time. So much is changing. It's such a cool world to be a part of. And we also want to recognize our friends, Bob and Malula. Once again, they're celebrating their 79th wedding anniversary. It's a big day for them. We're really, really excited that they have stuck together for so long. And I guess that's it. Until next time, we're Alamo Music Center once again, and have a great weekend. Thanks.